Can we take it back to the beginning as to, where your love for music and events and, the powerhouse that you are with what you're doing, where did that all come from?
My love of music dates back to a really long time ago. I grew up steeped in classical music, actually, and then so that was my original formation. But then when I was about 17, I started dating a musician. Fast forward, he ended up winning a Grammy for Best Song and co-wrote Smooth with Rob Santana. I moved to New York with him from Cincinnati, Ohio, and we used to check out gigs all the time at the experimental music venue, the Knitting Factory, plus CBGB's. And so from the age of even 18 years old, I was listening to people like Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan and Astor Piazzolla and all kinds of really experimental jazz like the Lounge Lizards. And I met Bootsy Collins when I was 20 years old and all kinds of stuff. My whole life has been extreme, like 360-degree interest in music to the point where I'm the type of person I don't listen to music in the background. I have to listen to it completely. That is an enduring passion of mine, and it's something which I hope and I think I brought to bear on the festival that I founded.
Wow, you're definitely bringing all of that. And, when I read the press release, it's not just a music festival. It's not just a festival in East Anglia. It really is bringing all of those things that you've just mentioned to the forefront of providing an experience for the audience that you're trying to hit. So let's talk about it then. East Anglian Festival 2022. Where did that begin for you?
Started in actually 2020, like the very beginning of COVID, and I was doing consulting work and marketing and blah blah. I moved to border Essex and Suffolk 6 years ago, and I moved from Hong Kong. Okay, and so I've always been in marketing, but everything ground to a halt during COVID, and I've always been this crazy culture vulture, going zigzagging all over the place to go to festivals. And I was at a quiet dinner, and I started talking about Stanza, which is this poetry festival in St Andrews in Scotland. And it was the last trip that I made before lockdown. And they said to me, why don't you start a festival? And I looked at them and I thought, okay, that's crazy. And then I thought about it a little bit a few days later. And I thought, wait, actually a festival is like holding a giant wedding, but with 30 different performers and speakers. So I thought, okay, actually it's not that unmanageable. This is plausible. And then I met one person who actually helped me get over the hump of self-doubt, who was a local businessman. He happens to be the founder of a company in the music industry called Audio Network. He happened to be my neighbor. By the way, Audio Network supplies British television with about 50% of its music. And that's relevant because this guy, his name is Andrew Sonic, he said, do it. And I said, okay, and that's what I needed. I needed the big shot in the arm. And far from being flaky, he actually he said, I know where you should do it. You should throw it at this place called Hedingham Castle down the road. And I never heard of it. I had heard of it, but I'd never gone inside. He said, let me call them. So he basically called the owners of Hedingham Castle literally the next day. And he pre-sold them the idea. And then I met with them. They loved the idea. And then the next thing I knew, Andrew called Evelyn Glennie, who is this legendary deaf percussionist, opened the London Olympics. Anyway, she's literally probably the world's most famous classical percussionist. And John Lloyd, who created Blackadder, Spitting Image, QI, as my first two speakers for EA Festival 2021. And that's how the ball started rolling, basically. And because I was able to get two fantastic luminaries involved at the very beginning, it wasn't that difficult for to have some momentum. And because it was COVID and so few people, a lot of people were just sitting on their hands twiddling their thumbs because no one was getting booked. There was no live anything.
Yeah, sure.
I was able to get people's attention and confirm them without great hassle. Whereas had it been an ordinary festival season, I would have had to book people 2 or 3 years in advance. So it was part luck, part just sheer craziness, and meeting this person, which was kismet, that brought me to just try my hand at launching this festival. And as things turned out, it went off without a hitch. It took place on July 31st, only 12 days after the end of lockdown. That was truly harrowing, as you can imagine, because
for sure.
People were holding back on buying tickets, the speakers and the performers until the very last minute. It was, they were unsure that it was going to go on. The original musical lineup is emblematic of what I've continued to do. And it consisted of, again, Evelyn Glennie, Calvin Singh, the tabla player. I had Nick Void, the experimental synth player, the keyboard player from Norfolk. Waiting for Smith, which is kind of like a folk pop band, singer-songwriter. Who else did I have? I had Tawia, who is an incredible alt soul singer-songwriter from Peterborough. And at the end of the 2-day festival, I had what I put together what I called an East Anglia showcase with Talvin, Nick Boyd, and Tawia to cap the weekend. And then the day before, I actually featured the winner of the Hastings International Piano Concerto Competition. And I have a partnership with them. His name is Roman Kozyukov. So it was wildly different. And there was also Rosie Chan. I actually, as I say these different sessions, it's hard to believe that I was able to have a full program of both music and talk.
Yeah, in the middle of a pandemic, post lockdown, post people feeling wary to buy tickets, to be booked, to travel down to a place that they may not have been to. That's brilliant. That's amazing.
You.
Yeah, that's really great. That's really great. I guess from that point then, like how did you then reflect on, well, imagine for the next one, we won't be in lockdown. How do we go bigger? How do we, make a bigger stamp on the kind of East Anglian festival circuit that this is us and we want to be, as known and as, as seen as other festivals? What was that moment after the first one?
Well, to be honest, I was so drained after the first festival. It took me a while to just pick myself up off the ground just because I was about to, I just dissolved into a puddle afterwards. And then I think that as with other festivals, this is what I've heard anyway, several of my speakers decided to really give me a helping hand. And so it was actually easier to sign up bigger speakers and to put together this year's program. And so I have I have Paul McKenna as a speaker, Francis Morris, who's director of Tate Modern. I have Anne Glenn Kohner, who is, I would say, a star of a completely different generation, who wrote a best-selling book about Princess Margaret. Hugh Johnson, who's synonymous with wine appreciation. I have a panel about psychedelic drugs, which was put together with the UK's top NGO on the subject, which I'm really proud of because we're the first festival to convene an event like that. I have panels as disparate as fashion to one about Hong Kong's political history. So, and I think it's I actually go it's a combination of heart and mind. In the case of a couple books, I read them and I was so floored by them. I literally put them down and basically rooted around my Rolodex to figure out how I could get in touch with the authors. in some cases.
That's brilliant. No, but the mixture is good, and especially in a time like now, a festival that does kind of open those questions, those discussions, open people's ears, not just for music, but also to hear things that they're going to take home and probably think about, like in a really in-depth way. I guess the next question is, when is the date for 2022 and how can people get involved? No, this is the time now.
Okay, so the festival is on the 11th and 12th of June. It's at a beautiful, enchanted location called Hedingham Castle on the border of Essex and Suffolk in a tiny village called, believe it or not, Castle Hedingham, which is obviously the word castle. I mean, Hedingham Castle's flipped. And both days are approximately 10 to 10. So 10 in the morning to 10 p.m. And besides the festival itself, which is going to be about 15 talks and 6 musical performances, but in 3 concerts. I hope that's not confusing. There's 6 musical acts.
Okay, but all within the same, on the same site.
All on the same site, split up between 2 days.
Nice.
So the first day is that concert is classical music and a double bill of a violinist playing Paganini. She's a Paganini specialist. Paganini is like the fireworks of the violin repertoire. And it's going to be like very, very, it'll literally be spectacular because it's technically so difficult. It's dazzling. And she will be followed by a mezzo-soprano from Barry St. Edmunds, but she's not going to sing the typical opera repertoire. Alabama Song by the Doors, for example, that was written by Kurt Weill. And she will be singing that song, for example, and Stephen Sondheim, George Gershwin, plus Kurt Weill, some Benjamin Britten. But it will be a very engaging,
very varied,
and fun cabaret of opera pieces. It won't be typical at all.
Yeah,
the intention with every single session that I'm doing is to keep the audience riveted through the content and the quality of both the speakers and the moderation. So that's that will be the first concert.
How we got in contact was there was a Wild Paths kind of collaboration, which is the team from Norwich, who are absolutely incredible. And there's another gig which will have some local singer-songwriter R&B kind of fusion stuff as well.
One of my missions is actually to partner with as many excellent arts organizations as I can in the region. And Wild Paths just came to my attention because it landed with such a boom in 2019 with its 200 acts in Norwich. So we co-curated the choice of acts together, and those are Maya Law, Mosiah Levy, and Bessie Turner. I do want to tell you, I listened closely to BBC introducing Essex and Suffolk before we made the choice. I actually gave Ben a short list of what I loved from those two shows.
Oh, that's brilliant.
That was also instrumental to the final choice that we made. And I was over the moon when you said that the lineup that we had put together was a dream lineup.
Oh, so beautiful artists, beautiful voices between the three of them. Something, I'd love that. Like, to see that gig would just take you on a journey, real chill, but really like heartfelt goosebump moments happening. Well, off the back of that, I'm going to play a Bessie Turner track, which was recorded live at Ed Sheeran's home gig at Chantry Park. Where can people get tickets?
eafestival.com. And for the gig with Wild Paths, they are also going to be making tickets available on their website for that specific concert.